Hi, everyone. We're going to get started with our next session. Is it time?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Hey, y'all. Did everybody get some coffee, some snacks? Ready for the second go round? Thank you all so much for being here again. We're going to get kicked off with our session focused on Title IV, which is the nutrition title in the Farm Bill. And I have a few slides just to get us oriented to the conversation around the Farm Bill and then around the nutrition title. And then we're going to hear from our two awesome panelists, one from Oxfam America and the other from the USDA Food and Nutrition Service. Next slide. And so, we can go to the next slide. So I think we spent a good amount of time already talking about the different titles that are in the Farm Bill. Just to remind folks that we're going to be talking about Title IV, nutrition. And this is personally my favorite title, what I'm most familiar with in the Farm Bill. So I'm really excited to dig into this with you all. Next slide. And so I think it's good to orient us to what is actually in the nutrition title. I think we are most familiar with SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which formerly was called food stamps. In the 2008 Farm Bill, the name was formally changed to reflect the intent of the program and to also move away from some of the stigma associated with the phrase food stamps. But also we have FDIPR, the Food Distribution Program on Indian Reservations, TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which primarily gets commodities into food banks across the country. The Commodity Supplemental Food Program, which primarily focuses on getting commodities to older adults, primarily in a food box. Those are often managed through food banks as well. The Community Food Projects, the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, and also GUS-SNP, the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program. What's not in the nutrition title? I think there are some folks in here who definitely focus on this, but the National School Breakfast and School Lunch programs are not under the nutrition title in the Farm Bill. They are managed by the Food and Nutrition Service at USDA, but the authorization for those programs in that language falls under the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act, which in 2010 was the Healthy Hunger Kids Free Act. That also is intended to be reauthorized on a 5-year basis, but Congress has not done that. And for programs of this nature that are so important for getting food and nutrition to kids in schools, it is challenging to know that the base levels of funding for these programs and authorization have not been updated as consistently as the SNAP program has within the Farm Bill. Also, the WIC program, or the Supplemental Program for Women, Infants, and Children, also under USDA FNS, but it's not under the jurisdiction of the Farm Bill. It falls under the jurisdiction of the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act. Some of those questions or interests in that might come up, but I thought it was important to make that distinction before we moved forward. And then also, I mean, the programs that we're most interested in, particularly for the summit, largely pertain back to credit, to commodities, crop insurance, and things of that nature. But I thought it was worth it to point out that close to 80% of the funding in the Farm Bill goes to nutrition programs. And that's huge. That reflects high rates of food insecurity across our communities in the United States, high rates of hunger, and those things also being correlated to instances of poverty and income insecurity and different issues that we know come along with that. But I thought this was an important orientation for thinking about what folks are advocating for when we go to the Hill, and also what some of the issue areas pertain to that we're going to hear from our panelists. And also, this is an important sort of policy combination to think about. The farmers that are in this room and in our communities who produce food that ultimately make it to market, that make it to grocery stores, are often being purchased by folks that are utilizing SNAP benefits. And so I think it's really important to keep that connection in mind and to remember that the policy efforts that we're pushing forward can be done at the same time. And in Congress, some interesting things going on related to SNAP, which we'll see how much we tap into that. Next slide. And then also just to kind of get your brain jogging around some of the different issue areas that have come up around SNAP. Access for folks who are undocumented, that is a challenge, especially in the state of California, where a lot of our co-residents are folks who are undocumented or live in families that have mixed status. There are many states that are represented in this room that operate SNAP in such a way where there are lifetime bans for participation for people who have a felony drug charge, and that hits a lot of our communities very hard. College food access for college students is huge, especially in California, across the country. People with limited English proficiency, older adults, folks living in rural areas, especially the lack of service centers available, and also Wi-Fi connectivity. And then also thinking about natural disasters and the COVID-19 pandemic and how hard that hit our communities and how the need for increased food assistance practically doubled overnight. And so these are some of the things that we'll be talking about, digging into. And then also currently the budget negotiations in Congress around the debt ceiling are hitting SNAP pretty hard, and thinking about the further implementation of work requirements and how hard that hits particular communities, especially where there are high rates of unemployment. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Mr. Clack from Oxfam America to give regards about their work and policy around SNAP and as it connects back to the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. Mr. Clack is the Director of Government Relations and Public Policy, and we're so thrilled to have you, and I'll turn it over to you. I believe the button to turn on is right there to the right. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome. My name is Mark Clack. I'm with Oxfam America. I think most people who know Oxfam know us as an international humanitarian and development organization. However, we do have a smaller U.S. domestic program which has entered into a partnership with the Federation and also the Tuskegee Agricultural Extension Program. Much of our work on the Farm Bill this year will focus around SNAP. And our immediate interest is making sure that we make permanent the increases in SNAPs, just as our presenter said, so that we can meet the increased demand for food assistance in the country. I think that most food banks around the country are probably seeing a 20–30% increase in demand, with many first-time people and first-time families lining up for assistance in at the local pantries. As the presenter also said, you know, last week's vote on the debt ceiling bill tried to or included worker requirements for SNAP, which is something that we oppose. So Oxfam's strategy is to advocate on Capitol Hill again for making permanent the increases in SNAP, but also standing up a rapid reaction communications program whereby where a vote is going down or a vote has occurred, that we get our information about the impact of the negative provision on the SNAP program, and try to get as many organizations to contact Washington, Capitol Hill, or at least put something out in the public domain so that people fully understand the issues at hand. We do plan to defend against harmful amendments such as, you know, worker requirements, any amendments or provisions that limit or restrict access to participation. And we also want to make sure that SNAP meets the increased demand for food assistance. We are an organization that prides itself on connecting with movements, and the farmer cooperative movement, the Black farmers cooperatives, and also the various hunger networks around the country are organizations and movements that we are interested in connecting with. So as we begin to ramp up our congressional advocacy, you know, we are open to working with anyone who like-minded, and I'm definitely interested in working with the AU, various AU centers that are represented here today, because I think that the work that you're doing is extremely valuable, particularly the work on economic and racial equality. So from there, I'll turn it over to our
Can you hear me? Oh, there it goes. Good afternoon. It's the afternoon, right? It's after, like, literally afternoon? Okay. Well, thank you all for being here today, and thank you for the invitation to speak to you all about nutrition, the nutrition title in the Farm Bill, especially for this year's Farm Bill reauthorization for 2023. My name is Alberto Gonzalez. I'm a political appointee in the Biden-Harris administration, serving as the senior advisor for external engagement at the USDA's Food and Nutrition Service. So I've been in this position now for about a year and a half, and I come from the advocacy space also, and I am a UC Berkeley alum also, class of 2007. And it's just been an incredible experience working for this administration, this agency on a critical issue, which is addressing food insecurity across our country. And again, I'm just very excited to be in the presence of all of you. And I was able to hear some snippets from the prior presentation. And I know that early this morning, Dr. Penny Brown Reynolds spoke to you all. And I heard that was a very exciting presentation. So I want to be mindful of time and I want to make sure I hear your questions. So we'll turn on to the next slide. Yes, so to help stimulate your work on the nutrition title, I wanted to provide a brief overview of the USDA's efforts to advance food and nutrition security and accelerate progress on the goals of the historic White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health to end hunger, improve nutrition and physical activity, and reduce diet-related diseases and disparities. Before doing so, I wanted to emphasize that the USDA and the Biden-Harris administration look forward to working with each of you, along with Congress, additional partners and stakeholders, as well as the public, to identify shared priorities for the 2023 Farm Bill that position the USDA to expand on impactful policies that are rooted in the historic achievements of the first 2 years of the Biden administration and the growing efforts within the Farm Bill to strengthen the impacts of our programs. The 2023 Farm Bill is a historic opportunity for American agriculture and rural America to transform our food and agricultural system from one that benefits a few to one that benefits many. Farmers work every day to produce food that feeds their communities, the nation, and the world. And over the last few years, they face increasing difficulty accessing markets and capturing their fair share of the food dollar. Even with record farm incomes this year, too many farmers, roughly 89%, took off farm work to meet the needs of their families. And I do want to share a story that a farmer shared with me after the White House conference. She mentioned that right before and during the pandemic, she worked so hard to feed the whole country that she lost her farm. So she couldn't even feed her own family. And so those stories, the experiences, the lived experiences of people that are touched by our programs or that are impacted by food insecurity certainly inspires the work that we do and drives us to move forward with policy changes. So I'm going to turn it over to the next slide and just mention that in terms of thinking about transformational change, at USDA, we recognize how our federal nutrition assistance programs are the most far-reaching tools available to improve health and the well-being of all Americans. Indeed, FNS administers a suite of more than 16 federal nutrition assistance programs that reach 1 in 4 Americans over the course of a year and have been proven to reduce food insecurity, improve health outcomes, and reduce healthcare costs. Specifically, the USDA reaches more than 41 million Americans through SNAP, more than 30 million children each day through our national school lunch and breakfast programs, more than 6 million parents and children through WIC, and our programs also reach about 99,000 schools and 250,000 retailers. Next slide, please. So in addition to our nutrition assistance programs, USDA also invests more than $1 billion per year on nutrition education and promotion efforts across all of our programs. And this includes our SNAP Ed or SNAP Nutrition Education Program, which is an evidence-based program that promotes healthy food choices, obesity prevention, and physical activity. Our work to develop the dietary guidelines for Americans that provides guidance about what to eat to promote health is another example of our work with the Department of Health and Human Services. We also translate these dietary guidelines to more consumer-friendly resources through My Plate or Mi Plato en Español for any Spanish speakers out there. And I also want to uplift our broader investments in research and food systems as well. So as discussions around reauthorizing the Farm Bill occur, I want to emphasize how the USDA is leveraging the momentum of the historic White House conference that took place last fall that aims to end hunger, improve nutrition and physical activity, and reduce diet-related diseases and disparities by 2030. The Biden-Harris administration published a national strategy on hunger, nutrition, and health the day before the historic conference and shared how non-federal partners collectively made more than $8 billion to advance the conference goals and implement the national strategy. The national strategy outlines our key goals, many of which include the need for Congress to act, and that could occur through the Farm Bill reauthorization process. What we can do is important, and how you can help us reach that through the Farm Bill is critical. But I also want to emphasize the White House recently launched a challenge to end hunger and build healthy communities, and outlined a variety of ways that non-government partners can help us accelerate progress on the White House goals. So if you're interested in learning more about this challenge, please feel free to reach out to me today. So on our next slide, we're going to talk more about food insecurity. And when we say food insecurity, we mean a lack of consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy life. This past fall, the USDA Economic Research Service published our nation's annual food security report, which found that 33.8 million Americans lived in households that struggled against hunger in 2021. This is a sobering number, but the report showed that the number of Americans experiencing food insecurity decreased by 5 million. And food insecurity among households with children was at a 2-decade low. The report suggests that one possible reason for this progress is how our federal nutrition assistance programs and the critical additional investments that we have been making during the pandemic helped combat hunger. Next slide, please. So I want to circle back to the USDA food security report. And while there was progress, the report also found that Black and Latino households were disproportionately impacted by food insecurity in 2021, with rates of 19.8% and 16.2% respectively. These rates were triple and double the rate of white households, which is 7%. Next slide. So without question, COVID-19 brought to the forefront how too many individuals and families in our great nation do not have access to healthy, affordable food. At the same time we were seeing the impacts of food insecurity, researchers also estimated that nearly 2/3 of COVID-19 hospitalizations across the country were related to diet-related diseases, including obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and heart failure. And one of the most disturbing aspects of the COVID pandemic was the disproportionate harm that it caused to historically underserved groups. While disparities in food insecurity and diet-related diseases were highlighted by COVID, this group knows well that these are long-standing problems that are associated with decades of structural inequities in education, employment, housing, among others. Next slide, please. So over the past 2 years, the USDA has been working to transform policies, programs, and practices in ways that have the greatest potential for ensuring equitable access to healthy, safe, and affordable foods. We are also working to build awareness among our staff and key partners about the sizable body of research indicating that structural racism harms health in ways that can be described, measured, and dismantled. And this work includes having each of our agencies across the department develop equity plans. And I'd be happy to talk to you about these plans as well after today. And then the next slide, please. We also have created the establishment of a USDA Equity Commission that holds public meetings as well. Next slide, please. So we are proud of our efforts thus far, but we have more work ahead to accelerate progress on equity. Next slide. So as Secretary Vilsack explained in launching the Food and Nutrition Security Initiative over a year ago, we are leveraging all of our assets to support moves towards healthier eating patterns in an equitable way. And we need your help. Each of you here today are trusted messengers and powerful allies. And by working to uplift the importance of our programs among your leaders, and to the extent that you can, helping our communities to enroll in these programs, you can help us advance our efforts to undo structural inequities in accessing healthy foods. So since launching our Food and Nutrition Security Initiative last March, the USDA has come to define nutrition security to mean consistent and equitable access to healthy, safe, and affordable foods, essential to optimal health and well-being. And there are two core motivations for this evolution. The first is the promotion of health equity, which means everyone has a fair and just opportunity to be as healthy as possible. The second is the recognition that structural inequities make it hard for many people to eat healthy and to be physically active. But we are also elevating how poor nutrition affects all demographic groups in the country. In fact, poor nutrition is the leading cause of death in the US and is responsible for more than 600,000 deaths per year. Poor nutrition and diet-related diseases have far-reaching impacts beyond health, including decreased academic achievement and increased financial stress. And these impacts translate to societal impacts as well, leading to reduced worker productivity, weakened military readiness, and skyrocketing healthcare costs. So using this four-pillared approach you see on the screen here, our efforts to advance food and nutrition security aim to provide meaningful nutrition support throughout all stages of life, as we did with the reevaluation of the Thrifty Food Plan to bring SNAP benefits more in line with the cost of eating healthy. We also aim to connect all Americans to healthy, safe, and affordable food sources through programs like the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program, or GUSNIP, which supports organizations such as one I met with a few weeks ago in Connecticut, and their produce prescription programs. We're also working to develop, translate, and enact nutrition science through partnerships like the Dietary Guidelines for Americans and My Plate as well. And we are also working to prioritize equity every step of the way, including our efforts to bring bridge language barriers to nutrition education resources and recipes. So at the foundation of all that we do at the USDA is driven and grounded in research and science. All of our work is driven by research and grounded in science. It's woven into our policies, informs each of our decisions, and most importantly, impacts every life that we touch. And our work is also driven by the lived experience of our staff, partners, and participants. And this includes me. I grew up in a immigrant family household in LA, East LA, and school meals were very vital for me growing up. And as a kid, I remember going to a food bank with my family because we needed additional resources at that time. And WIC was essential for my family as well. So right now we have a window of opportunity to take these powerful programs to do even more, but we need your help to address program underutilization and to strengthen the impacts of these programs, including the public health impacts that they make. So from the president on down, there's a strong interest in promoting nutrition security and racial equity. And we need to take advantage of this important moment. Next slide. So I'm going to briefly run through the four pillars I mentioned, and then we'll pivot to questions towards the end. So the first pillar is meaningful support, which has four sub-pillars, including ensuring benefits are adequate to support healthy eating patterns, updating program nutrition standards to reflect the latest nutrition science, delivering high-quality nutrition education, and providing breastfeeding promotion and support. I want to start by highlighting one of the most significant approaches we have taken thus far to ensure adequate support for healthy eating. In October 2021, the USDA reevaluated the Thrifty Food Plan, which serves as the basis for SNAP benefit calculation. This action resulted in the first permanent increase to the purchasing power of SNAP benefits since the Thrifty Food Plan was introduced 45 years ago, and increased monthly benefits by 21% or $36 per person per month. So on our website, we have a web page dedicated to each of our pillars, so you can learn more about the work that we're doing under this pillar. You also learn more about our programs such as TFAP, as was referenced earlier, and FDIPR, or the food program that supports foods distributed on reservations. So next slide, please. I do want to make a note about some recent changes made to SNAP as a result of congressional actions. So as of early March, the pandemic-related boosts that occurred via the SNAP emergency allotments, which is separate from the Thrifty Food Plan I just mentioned, ended as a result of the recent omnibus bill passage. So FNS continues to work closely with states and partners to prepare for or to help navigate these changes, along with changes tied to the end of the public health emergency that ends on May 11th. So on our website, we have a dedicated page with background information and a question and answer resource on what's happening with respect to SNAP and the end of the federal public health emergency and what information is available to share with your community members as well. So second pillar, healthy food, which has the following three subpillars: promoting and supporting fruit and vegetable consumption, using incentive programs to promote access to healthy eating, and providing USDA foods directly to people in need. An example of our healthy food related work is our administration of several incentive programs. Specific examples include the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program and the Healthy Fluid Milk Incentive Pilot Program. So between 2019 and 2022, GusNIP has provided $267 million in funding to 172 projects throughout the US and its territories. This includes the GusNIP Produce Prescription Program that conducts projects that demonstrate and evaluate the impact of fresh fruit and vegetable prescriptions to increase procurement and consumption of fruits and vegetables, reduce individual and household food insecurity, and reduce healthcare usage and associated costs. One example I heard about recently is a collaboration between Wholesome Wave, Hispanic Health Council in Hartford, Connecticut, and the Yale Griffin Prevention Research Center, which is using a food as medicine model that centers on community fidelity, equity, and dignity to implement a proven produce prescription program and prevention intervention in Hartford, Connecticut. And while these incentive programs are continuing to build an evidence base, in the second year of GusNIP, participants redeemed more than $20 million in nutrition incentives. So we're very excited to see this program put in place, and this program was created during the last iteration of the Farm Bill. Next slide, please. So in June of 2022, as part of our food system transformation framework, Secretary Vilsack announced nearly $40 million to support GusNIP using funding from the American Rescue Plan Act. So this is an area where you all can help as well. Next pillar is collaborative action, which has the following sub-pillars that touch on supporting nutrition, child nutrition school operators, translating our DGAs, and working with industry to help tailor products to our programs. One collaborative example is how we work with the Department of Health and Human Services to regularly update the dietary guidelines for Americans. And these DGAs, as they're called, forms the basis of federal nutrition policy, education, and outreach, and food assistance to reflect the latest nutrition science. Yes, so just wanted to highlight an opportunity for you all to engage. You could go online, submit comments, weigh in on this process that informs each of our respective programs. And then I mentioned My Plate earlier. That's another opportunity to promote and support public-private collaborative actions to leverage this important resource to help support and promote healthy eating. So we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, so SNAP-Ed, this is another example of our collaborative efforts. So the SNAP Nutrition Education Program, we work through more than 166 implementing agencies and with more than 30,000 community partners across the country. So if you're interested in learning more about these programs, please feel free to come up to me after today's presentation. So our final pillar is on equitable systems, which has the following 5 sub-pillars: strengthening support to Native American tribal food programs, expanding online shopping options for SNAP and WIC participants, bridging language barriers to nutrition education resources and recipes, reaching underserved populations, and bringing together diverse partners to foster healthy food options. So here's an example of our work around Indigenous Food Sovereignty Initiative, which aims to promote traditional food ways, Indian country food and agriculture markets, and Indigenous health through foods tailored to American Indian and Alaska Native dietary needs. So let's talk, so switching gears from the 4 pillars that I just mentioned, I wanted to highlight briefly the National Strategy on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health, which was released the day before the White House conference. So this strategy is anchored in 5 pillars, which are you see listed below, but I'll just run through them very quickly. Pillar 1, improve food access and affordability. Pillar 2, integrate nutrition and health. Pillar 3, empower all consumers to have access to healthy choices. Pillar 4, support physical activity for all. And lastly, pillar 5, enhance nutrition and food security research. So the day after the White House conference, the USDA Food and Nutrition Service released this report, which you can find online, that includes a summary of all of our programs, who we reach, what we do, and what our impacts are. So I encourage you all to take a look at our website for more background information on our suite of nutrition assistance programs across the country. So together with the next slide works actually. Yes. Before I jump onto this slide, the report that I highlighted earlier, that's just another opportunity for you all to take a look, but also thinking about ways we can work together to not only advance the national strategy, but thinking about how this important moment with the Farm Bill reauthorization could be an exciting opportunity to help us further and advance the goals, certainly of our food and nutrition security efforts, but also the goals of the White House conference. So in going back to my point around integrating nutrition and health, a few weeks after the historic White House conference, we actually hosted a healthcare summit at the USDA. We brought together health insurance companies. We brought together anti-hunger partners. We brought together, we had speakers from various sectors within the food and ag space to really talk about how can we work together to advance food and nutrition security? How can we work together to address these longstanding disparities? What steps can health insurance plans take to help reduce these barriers and increase access? We had a speaker from Farmer John. Are you familiar with Farmer John? And we could provide a snippet of our summit, but we have a summary of the actions and the presentations that took place during the summit. But the goals of the summit were to celebrate and showcase what the healthcare sector is already doing to help advance nutrition security, identifying existing and potentially stronger intersections with USDA equities. And really, it's an opportunity to inform government and policy leaders, healthcare leaders, and the public about this exciting work that we're doing for an important cause. So some of the outcomes from the summit and the more than 100 meetings we've had with various stakeholders on our food and nutrition security efforts has been to really just raise awareness about our programs across all of our partners. And I say that because there are some enrollment gaps. About 1 in 2 that are eligible for WIC are not signed up, and about 1 in 5 that are eligible for SNAP are not signed up as well. So there's a lot more work to be done to try to address these enrollment gaps. And we're leveraging all of our partners, including all of you here today, to help promote our suite of nutrition programs across the country. And I also wanted to uplift another initiative. We've partnered with NIFA, the National Institute on Food and Agriculture, on a partnership to help support a diverse WIC workforce to ensure that WIC staff and the WIC workforce reflects the communities that our programs serve. And I wanted to uplift this slide that summarizes recent investments that we made to help advance food and nutrition security. And we could think about ways we can maximize the Farm Bill to strengthen the public health and equity impacts of our programs as well. We know that SNAP is a critical tool. Research has found that SNAP has helped reduce health outcomes according to different research studies. So there's a lot of opportunity here to maximize that program. So again, I want to be mindful of time, but please feel free to reach out to me after today's presentation. We have a ton of resources on our website about our programs, about our food and nutrition security initiative, our White House conference goals and ways you can engage in this new challenge to end hunger and build healthy communities. And again, I look forward to talking to each and every one of you here today. And I'll leave my contact information here for y'all to reach out with any further questions. If you want us to talk more with your respective organizations about our work, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. But I just want to really thank you all for your incredible work. And I heard some of the questions that were raised earlier, and I think it's so valuable to be in this space of and talk about these equity-driven initiatives and issues that we need to tackle as a country. So thank you all, and I'll turn it over back to our host.
Recording in progress.
Recording in progress.
I'll stay over here and help moderate the questions. We have about 25 or so minutes before Mr. Clark needs to take off. One of the things that I want to kick us off with thinking about before we turn it over to the audience for questions is that so much of the SNAP program, WIC program, and things of that nature are funded at the federal level, but administered at the state level. And I think that's a pretty good structure in place in terms of the SNAP program, that 99% of the funding that comes from Congress to authorize and fund this program goes out to people in terms of benefits, and 1% is left to administrative costs. But I think that the experience of participating in a program like SNAP varies so greatly across the country, where in some places you might have access to an online application. In some places there might be a ban in place based off of criminal activity. There might be some other structural barrier in place, like language access and things of that nature. And so, and the last thing I want to add very quickly is that back in 2016, when I was working in New Orleans, I met Mr. Ben Burkett for the first time. He was vending at the market umbrella in New Orleans at the farmer's market. And it was so awesome to see that connection, to see people using their SNAP dollars in that way. But the user experience of that for some folks was not very easy. And I think that for a lot of people who have interfaced in attempting to get benefits for themselves, for their families, they've encountered shame, they've encountered difficulty in terms of paper processing and things of that nature. And so I'm really curious about how do y'all think about the user experience of someone coming into a service office, trying to apply, maybe with limited Wi-Fi access and things of that nature? What can we, what's coming out of the USDA to think about how to improve experiences for people that have had really challenging interactions at the local level, maybe with the state office or something like that?
Yes. Here we go. No, thanks for the question. I know that, we have an executive order that we have to implement from the Biden-Harris administration related to reducing burdens really for families that are eligible for programs to sign up. And I think one example I wanted to highlight was our work with WIC. So thanks to the American Rescue Plan Act, we were able to receive $390 million from Congress to modernize the program so that it's able to reach all those that are eligible. So part of that process is really improving the application journey for those that are eligible for our programs to sign up, and thinking about the having it be from the perspective of families that are enrolling. So it's certainly top of mind for us, just given from the president's executive order. This is something that across all of our respective departments we're trying to do, and recognizing that there are challenges in participants being able to apply, whether it's stigma, whether it's he needed to hear from trusted messengers. We have a faith-based office at the USDA that we've been working with to try to promote our programs, because we know that faith-based leaders are crucial trusted messengers to get the word out about our programs. I was at a meeting last year with a group of veterans and who share that hearing from other veterans would help address some of the stigma that the community faces in accessing our programs. But I will say that we're continuing to, this is a priority, and so we're continuing to implement, and again, would welcome any further information or feedback you have, because as we engage and hear from more stakeholders, it's helpful to just hear your respective experiences or challenges. We have regional offices across the country. We have 7. And so those are other resources for you all at the regional level to share any concerns or questions you have. And we're here to be a resource. So we'll welcome our continued collaboration on this.
And then Mr. Clack, I have one question for you, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Much of Oxfam's work is internationally focused in terms of assistance, especially getting food into areas where there's significant food insecurity, either because of war or conflict or natural disasters. But that's also something that hits really close to here in the US, in the South, especially during hurricane season, in California, especially with wildfire season. And so what are the opportunities for understanding the need for food assistance in times of disaster? And what does Oxfam, what does that work what does that work look like abroad, but also how do we think about that in the context, especially for farmers and people living in areas where it's more disaster prone?
Well, that's a very good question. I think what it looks like internationally is working through UN agencies and other international NGOs in humanitarian situations. Domestically, Oxfam's U.S. domestic program was started around Hurricane Katrina in working with local disaster agencies, FEMA, and also the Red Cross, and being able to raise money and bring our humanitarian expertise to bear. We've been doing a lot of work the last couple of years in Ethiopia, Somalia, East Africa, famine. And again, it's working with the international community, trying to marshal resources, trying to advocate to the European Union, the US government, the African Union, about how we can all work collectively together to alleviate human suffering. And we also look to do the same thing here in the States, which is why Dr. Michaela Sherrod, who is our US domestic program director, has reached out to the Federation of Southern Cooperatives and also Tuskegee, Southwest Georgia Project, trying to create a network of people who can not only help us with service delivery, but also increase our capacity for research and understanding.
Thank you so much. I want to open it up to the crowd now. I see Diego's hand first, and then Nina, and then Kolu. Name and organization, please.
Is this on? All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Diego Villegas Aguilar. I'm coming with the Berkeley Food Institute, but I'm also representing the Latinx in Public Policy student organization at the Goldman School of Public Policy. And my question is to Antonio specifically, and I'm very curious in regards to the External Engagement Office or generally the Biden administration, what are their efforts against reducing the discriminations to immigrants in regards to eligibility to SNAP programs? Because just remembering that regardless if you're considered a qualified or non-qualified immigrant, through the Welfare Act, you are restricted and do not have access to federal cash assistance. And just curious also, I know that the Biden administration has tackled the public charge concept, but just remembering that there is a whole environment of fear and tension and misinformation from these programs, specifically to immigrant communities, where language access is key. And equitable language access related to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. It's also protection of discrimination against national origin. So I'm just curious when are we going to see expansions on SNAP eligibility for immigrant communities? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So yeah, I could share a few updates or actions. So I will say that it's one of the important populations for us to reach are immigrant families. And as you mentioned, we have worked across different agencies and the White House on the public charge rule, raising awareness about the final public charge rule. But we know that there's still some confusion out there, and so this is there's ongoing efforts to try to make it clear. But we know that it's important to really leverage trusted messengers to get the word out. To ensure those that are eligible are signing up for our programs. Regarding expanding eligibility, there is a role that Congress has to play to make those changes. But for us, I think it's really critical that we are out there and letting communities know that we're here to be a resource. And that's been part of my role actually, is just going out to different parts of the country and meeting with families. I was about this time last year, I went to the Colonias part of Texas and South Texas and met with families there. And met with a mom who really found it important to hear from a promotora or community health worker about resources available to her. I went to another office, a WIC office in New Orleans, Louisiana last year, and I heard from a Latino father who didn't know he was eligible for WIC. And so, there's a lot of important trusted messengers out there that are working to get the word out, but we're working to reach all key communities that we can to make sure that they're aware about our programs and that they could come to us if they have any questions, that we're a resource. And we are, as I mentioned earlier, we do have an equity plan in place, and we do touch on language access. So I'm happy to share that with you and talk further. But it's really critical for us right now to address and advance equity across all of our programs to ensure that we work together to address these longstanding challenges.
We had Nina and then Kolu and then what's your name? Bonita. Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
There you go.
Hi, Nina from the Berkeley Food Institute. I'm also on the advisory board of Saba Grocers, which is a group of Yemeni vegetable grocers in Oakland who are GusNIP grantees and trying to bring more fresh produce there. My question is about corporate lobbying at FNS. And I'm, over the years, I've seen how all these wonderful, ambitious health promotion plans seem to get waylaid by food industry priorities. And, it's just so sad because I know there's really good people who want to improve lives there, and they keep seeing the goals move further and further away, and Americans' health is deteriorating. We have in this room some of the most wonderful producers of healthy food. So my question is about how can they get more into the supply chain? I'm curious who in the room sells to FNS, either through selling to a food bank, and the food banks it's not only donations, they buy as well, or to sell to WIC, or sell to a child nutrition program. Anybody? 1, 2, that's great, but also, damning, because it says that all of these wonderful producers are not getting into the supply chain. I know this is also outside the Farm Bill, it's child nutrition reauthorization as well, but the school lunch nutrition situation is just dismal. And so I'm just wondering, what can you all do at FNS to work with more producers, say to have pre-cut squash, pre-cut greens, other types of ways to facilitate, because the farmers want to provide it, the clients at the food banks or the children want, or the school food operators want to get it, but FNS seems to be standing in the way by only opening up contracts to really the big junk food corporations. And then the junk gets in our kids' schools, and it's just really disgusting stuff for them to eat. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Well, if there are any producers out there, we're here to listen and learn and engage. And if there are new partners that we haven't engaged with in the past, we want to hear from you. And because this is the goals that we're trying to achieve here that I referred to earlier, we want to work with key players across the industry, across the community to really advance these goals. And it's going to require, different communities from across the country. And but I think what we want to do now is really try to reach and hear from all of you, so that we can know who else is doing this incredible work across the country. We may not know, but we want to, we're working to meaningfully reach out and hear from you. And I appreciate your question, and I would love to talk to more of you who have these concerns also, because I want to make sure I, elevate it where I can, because I think it's important to have, voices across the country involved in these important actions, because we know how it's going to take all of us to really tackle these issues. So I really appreciate your point and your question. Thank you.
Kolu? Oh, someone with the microphone? Kolu, can you raise your hand?
Hi, thank you for your work and your presentation. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to answer this question, because it really goes to sort of the intersection between the different titles, the commodity titles and food and nutrition. Little bit mixed feelings about the goal of permanently increasing SNAP, because I think the goal should be affordability, because either food prices are down or income is up. And back in 2000, I think it was the 2004 Farm Bill, there was some analysis done about the cost of a unit of a calorie from fast food versus whole produce. And the calorie from fast food was significantly less expensive, which is what drives people to eat food that's not nutritious, is that it's more affordable for them to fill up. And at the same time, there was a study written that I think it was called, what was it called? I forget the name of the study, but it showed that the amount of money going into specialty crops in terms of direct payments to farmers was a tiny, minuscule fraction, like less than 4% of the overall money going, which mostly went to the inputs for not only fast foods, but the unhealthy foods. So it was unfunded mandate. That was the name of the study, unfunded mandate. And so, while we have all this taxpayer money going into creating the high fructose corn syrup, the oils, the stuff that's not healthy, and then we're telling people that they need to eat fruits and vegetables, what can we do? What can you guys do to actually support more diversified farm production? These folks are mostly produce growers, so love to hear your answer to that.
Me too. Listen, I think that the most important thing that we can do is to work together and to offer different approaches and different ideas to address these issues. And from our perspective, also doing more research and have more evidence-based information into the policy-making process. There's no silver bullet per se, but I do think that we probably have as good an opportunity now working with the current secretary and this current administration to bring about change and also getting more produce and other things into the supply chain and addressing concerns about nutrition and so on and so forth. And so I think that whomever you're talking to regarding the Farm Bill, whatever information you can pass on to us that'll help augment our advocacy efforts, please do, because, one of the benefits of trying to advocate on the Farm Bill and staying involved in these issues is issues like what you're talking about are put on the table. And it's up to us to try to find a way to make sure that they're addressed and included.
And I would just add that, when this administration has also released the American Families Plan, and that includes a number of other critical policies like increasing the minimum wage, childcare, that are powerful drivers to help support families across the country, and that, as we know, contributes to strengthening local economies and family budgets. So that's another. There are various mechanisms out there that could help us really improve the families and communities that we deeply care about as well.
Bonita.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bonita Clemens. I'm from South Carolina. And the organization that I represent is called Diane's Call. And it's been in existence since 2001. It became 501c3 in 2008. Around 2012, I think, I became certified. I'm the director of it. I became certified to have a mobile market. A gentleman came to my house, looked at my truck. He was like, this is kind of new for us. So he saw my truck, and later on I was approved. Well, the fees got so high on using the machine because it was new. Eventually it was just too much. So fast forward to, let's say, last year, I applied again and I was denied. I applied again and I was denied again. So I said, okay, this third time I'm going to go get an organization that has been that has about 19 different authorizations to do SNAP. And we got on a call and they were sitting right with me, and we were talking to FNS, I think FNS, and they asked, why are you requiring Benita to do things that you don't ask us to do? They wanted to come to my facility, came to the facility. They said, we're more confused now that we've seen your facility. I said, well, the gentleman that you sent, he was just answering all the questions. Long story short, I'm going to go a fourth time, but I would really like for you to help me, please. I've done it before. I'm totally legit. They have every single thing except my grandchild, and they ain't getting my grandbaby. They might can have my daughter, but they ain't getting my grandbaby. But I really need some help, because what I'm trying to do is reach the rural areas in South Carolina. People who don't have transportation. I've been blessed enough to have transportation to get the food to them. And right now, everything is coming out of our pockets when it really doesn't have to all the time. And again, if they have SNAP, then we want to be able to allow them to purchase from us. So please help us.
Yeah, let's connect. And I'm sorry that happened, but we could, I think that makes sense to just really, there's, as we all know, there's a lot of areas in need that there is no access to grocery stores. And that's why, you know, part of the food system transformation framework investments we've made has been working to tackle those issues. But we know that, you know, it's important that I really appreciate you sharing your experience, so we could connect today and we could talk more and see what we can do to make sure that, you know, for those stakeholders out there or leaders out there that want to really play a role, like what can be done to just make it make that process a bit more less burdensome and more sort of supportive. And that's why we're here. We want to, you know, be a resource for you. That's why I'm here, to hear from you all. So I appreciate all the points you've all raised. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
I'll just add really quickly that FNS has regional offices, and I think South Carolina, it falls under their Southeastern Regional Office, if that's not a agency that you've connected with, but I'll leave that to Alberto. We have time for one more question. I think it's Mr. Wilson. Oh, who else? Oh, I missed it. I can't see you. Okay, Mr. Wilson, and then Darnella, and then we'll wrap up.
My bullet has a silver tip on it.
All right.
I got an answer. I raised my hand up in lieu to the question that we were growing food to sell to the food bank. That's a little bit deceiving. I've been in communication with the Atlanta Community Food Bank about growing local fresh vegetables. And the difference in terms of where we are right now is the price point. The food bank want to pay me for seconds and thirds is because that's what they buy. If any of you got those boxes during the pandemic, the sweet potatoes was so small that you couldn't even start use them as starter potatoes. The broccoli had already flavored. And that's what they were giving us to give away to needy families. So the answer, the silver tip on the bullet is to allow, and I'm one of the 12 members that serve on the Urban Ag Committee for Secretary Vilsack. The silver bullet on the tip is to allow urban farmers and small farmers to grow food and give it away to marginalized and underserved communities. And when we do that, somebody need to make up the difference in terms of what the food bank would pay that urban farmer or that small farmer, so that we are getting fair market prices for the vegetables that we grow. That's the answer. That's part of the answer to our challenges. Thank you.
It sounds like a silver bullet to me.
Does a silver bullet kill werewolves or vampires?
Somebody.
Yeah.
Alberto, did you want to respond to that before getting to?
No, I think
No,
I think it's I think again hearing those experiences, and we want to do what we can to make sure that all communities have access to healthy fresh fruits locally from local producers, leveraging other local leaders. So I think this is a big focus for us, and we know that there's a lot of work to do. Again, we want to just appreciate your time, your input, and I'm here to talk after to see what are ways we can work with each other. So thank you.
Darnella?
Yes, Darnella Burkett of Mississippi Association of Cooperative with the Federation. And I'd be so glad when I hear him say, Mr. B is at the farmer's market and he's selling away, but you know where he bring all those receipts and coupons and things home to? The daughter. So the food stamp machine, let me just say, has been a issue in and out with us at the farmer's market. Okay, so 9 times out of 10, when they can't swipe their card, Mr. B gives the produce away. So I have an issue with that because when I get back and I call FNS trying to get a, conversation, and we need some training for the producers who have the machine, who does not have broadband, who's not in the area to accept it. Then it was like, well, the farmer's market accepted. Well, when the farmer's market is accepted, then we have to pay a small fee to the farmer's market for accepting the food stamps in the first place. So it's a training that needs to be in place for producers only, those that are growing and has the machine. We have cooperatives also that takes food stamps. But then there's an issue because you want to know, well, how many people are using the machine? Well, it belongs to the cooperative and they are members of that. But there's a problem because you're trying to keep up with what those farmers are bringing there to the co-op, what that price is, and how are we breaking that down. So I'm thinking maybe a little bit more training for the producers to be able to have. And that way I keep sending Mr. B to the farmer's market.
Sounds like a recommendation.
No, thank you for sharing that. I'll take everything we've talked about today. I'll be sure to share it with my team, my colleagues, because we want to make sure that we minimize any sort of disruptions wherever they happen. And again, as was mentioned, we do have regional offices. So if any of these issues come up where there's in terms of an additional voice you could talk to, we have staff in our 7 regions across the country.
Thank you all so much. Another round of applause. I have just a few announcements before we break for lunch. Let's be back here by 1:55, and lunch is going to be in the federal room, in the dining room. Oh, we want to come back to the federal room at 1:55 for the next round of sessions. Okay. And then at 2 p.m. we'll be zooming in very quickly with folks from the African Food Sovereignty Alliance, which I'm so excited about, to talk about the trade title. Also, big thank you to Candy Shibley for providing the coffee yesterday and today. We appreciate you. We will be closing up today at 5 o'clock, and the buses, sorry? Oh, yeah. We'll be closing up today at 5 o'clock, and the buses will be taking us back to DC at 6:30. I also want to give a shout out to Tamber Ray Stevenson. Can you raise your hand and say hello? Tamber runs WANDA and also is one of the sort of founders, thinkers behind the Food Bill of Rights, which is getting a lot of traction. And y'all will hear more about that at the reception tomorrow from 6:30 to 8 at Eaton Hotel. So please do come and participate in that. Nikki, am I missing any more announcements? Are we good to go? All right. Thank y'all so much. And please go have some lunch. Woo!